Greetings and welcome to Flanagan's Ecologic. I am your host, Ted Flanagan, and today I've got Grant Gunnison as my guest. He is the founder and the CEO of Zero Homes, a company based in Denver, Colorado. His mission is to help owners electrify their homes and to save money, to make homes healthy and emissions-free. Delighted to have Grant on the podcast today. Hey, Grant, welcome to the podcast. It's very nice to meet you.
Ted, thanks for having me on. It's great to meet you as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate what you're doing with Zero Homes. I've already introduced you before now. And what is the focus this week? I always wonder what people are. We'll talk more broadly, but what's the focus this week for you?
This week, well, so I'm in Chicago this week. The company's in Denver, so I'm out here to meet with a couple of our customers, ComEd and the city of Chicago. Actually, we run a low income program for them, and then meeting with some prospective customers as well. So, I don't do a lot of travel like this for work, but it's kind of fun to, well, one, just get to meet people in person. There's just such a great energy about that, and so much of our world these days is through a pane of glass. So that's just fun and energizing. And then as part of working with ComEd, we also now have a partnership with Exelon, kind of their parent company, and working with a bunch of those folks as well. So
that's interesting to me. I thought you were based in Denver. I thought we'll talk a little bit about the Cambridge, Massachusetts connection, and then I thought you were doing some work in Northern California, but I didn't realize you were also in Chicago.
Oh yeah, we're in 4 states: Colorado, Illinois, and really Chicagoland and Illinois. And then we have a partnership with a utility that covers 3/4 of the state of Minnesota, and then Bay Area, California, and then we've done work in the Northeast, Boston, Connecticut, Rhode Island, a little bit of Maine.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the utilities are sponsoring your services, right? They have goals to get out there and electrify in their communities, and so they need your advisory capabilities.
It's not so altruistic, a lot of them are regulated to do energy efficiency work in a very broad sense, and they generally turn those requirements into energy efficiency programs, increasingly more electrification programs, and they need help to get their regulatory targets met. Yep. Sometimes they are just trying to steal load from the gas guys, or they're trying to deal with summer or winter peaks, and there's a long list of ancillary challenges that utilities have. Broadly speaking, they hire us to solve one or several of those challenges.
Right. Let's back all the way up. Grew up where? Are you a Colorado kid?
No, I'm not. I grew up in Southern California, but I do have a very fun fact, which I have increasingly started to tell most recently. My last name is Gunnison, and there's a city in Colorado, Gunnison. There's also one in Utah, and that is my family name. So my family did found the town of Gunnison 5 generations ago, and the guy at the time was the captain in the military, and he was prospecting a path for the Intercontinental Railroad. They did not find the right path, and part of that was they ran into a very steep, narrow canyon called what is now called the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, and also now a national park. Yep. And so, anyways, just kind of a fun little bit of history there, and something I now get to go see every once in a while since I'm living in Colorado.
That's great. Yeah, I've been there. It's fantastic. What a great story. I've done a little bit of digging. Was your dad in the construction business?
He was, yeah. So my dad worked in the construction business for 30 plus years, originally building new construction homes in Colorado. Worked for a company called Groupie, who I don't think is around anymore, actually. But yeah, he built about 4,000 homes in Colorado. Then they moved him to Arizona, eventually moved him to California. And then when I was in elementary school, he started his own GC business, doing retrofit work, kind of everything you can imagine kitchens, bathrooms, gut outs, additions, tear downs, and the like.
And I
So
take it he roped you in like any dad
well, of
would.
course, like any good dad would, Ted, yeah. And said, "Hey, you should learn how to use your hands." So,
Yep.
when I vividly remember, I think the first time he ever brought me out on a job, I was like in third, fourth grade or something.
Yeah.
Learning how to use a skill saw and all the things by fifth, sixth grade, and on weekends helping them out, pulling trailers and material around, all the things. So,
Yeah.
It definitely was. And maybe at the time a little bit like, all right, Dad, yeah, let me roll my eyes, But in hindsight, I actually just feel very lucky to have had an upbringing where I got roped into things that were not just, doing schoolwork and everything else.
But then you went off to MIT. You went off to Cambridge and studied electrical engineering. So what were you thinking about at that point?
Yeah, well, maybe this is the overconfident 18-year-old in me, but I spent a lot of time building a lot of things at an early age. And I said, well, if I'm going to go to college, I should do something that I don't feel confident in knowing how to do. And I did a bunch of robotics in high school. And, of course, wasn't by any means a trained mechanical engineer. But, I was kind of like, well, if I can imagine it, I'm pretty confident I can build it. So let me try and go do something else. And spent time immediately doing software. And, I found myself not as stoked about that, I think, in the first couple of years of school. So I went off and spent the last couple of years doing electrical engineering stuff, which I thought was just incredibly cool. It almost seemed like black magic at the time.
Yeah.
And then eventually, sort of combined all that. So I spent a lot of time doing electronics and software as an embedded engineer, and both, as an undergrad and then also in grad school as well.
Yeah, congratulations on that. Great credentials you have. And then,
well, thank you.
And then you went off to NASA. You talk about that experience. Was that right after grad school?
Yes, it was actually a continuation as well of grad school. So, and we'll probably get to this, but in between undergrad and grad school, I actually went home to California to run my dad's GC business for 2 years. And so, we can cover that in a bit. It's quite the story. But grad school for me was a master's doing very much the similar type of electronics and software work. Originally, I was doing like coreless transformers, which shockingly enough, Drew Bagliano's now started a business to do similar things there, which I was kind of laughing about the other day. I mean, like, that was a good idea. I just didn't really ever get the time to work on it. And then I spent most of my time building small satellites. So something that's about the size of, 2 Kleenex boxes. And we were doing laser communication and Earth imaging work. So think of it as the fanciest laser pointer you can imagine. Transferring information from like low Earth orbit to ground, and then from satellite to satellite.
Oh, very interesting. Well, now I don't know where to go, because you sort of teased me with going back and working for your dad. Let's get that out of the way. What happened?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it starts off not being a very fun story. So. The first semester of grad school, my dad passed away. And so I ended up dropping out of school and went home to run the family business.
Yeah.
And really that was just to help my family out. My mom, of course, needed some help. And my sister was in high school, and, that was the breadwinner of the family. So, it's an insane story in that, the first day I showed up, there wasn't a salesperson to sell anything. There wasn't a price to sell anything at. Yeah. And there was 18 people running around, and you're like, holy moly, we have to reinvent this entire business overnight. And I did that. It was a very challenging 18 months. And, of course, the overconfident 23-year-old in me was like, you know what, we got this. I'll figure it out. This can't be nearly as hard as all the things I just spent doing in school.
Right.
At least not as complicated, maybe. Yeah. It turns out it was very hard. And I learned a lot doing that. And in many ways, that is largely the inspiration for the business I'm building.
Zero Homes. Now, Greentown Labs, I've been to, I think, in Somerville, Mass, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess you got involved with Greentown. Talk about Greentown Labs and that incubator and how that, I think that's probably where you started Zero Homes.
Yeah. So maybe I'll spend one more minute on the sort of inspirational point here, because it's quite relevant. Which I quickly turned into the outbound sales team for my dad's GC business, and ran hundreds and hundreds of sales calls. What I found like most viscerally painful in that business was just how expensive it was to acquire new customers.
Yeah.
Fully burdened, it's like 20 to 25% of revenue is when it costs to acquire leads and then go book appointments, and you're closing X percentage of those appointments. I was actually quite good at it. I closed about 60% of my leads into contracts. But all to say that what I realized was that was not like a great product experience for homeowners, and a really, really painful operational experience for contractors. And I think it's also deeply uncomfortable, in a lot of ways. Like, homeowners don't love having a stranger come to their house and poke around every nook and cranny. And it's not just one, it's probably 3 or 5 for the same product they're trying to purchase.
Sure. Yeah.
It's been a huge amount of time, just trying to understand what to do and what it should cost and everything else. And of course, it's really hard for contractors because they're closing, 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 appointments that they run, and cost them a few $100 to go deliver each one of those appointments. And the industry has kind of been in a little bit of like race to the bottom. Everyone gives free estimates, and so there's just this insanely large funnel cost, and it leads to a lot of complexity. So I didn't have a way to solve that then, but it was just insanely painful for me to go through that experience. Even though, like, I love meeting strangers, and I'm great in conversation and whatnot. It's fun to learn about people. But I think just from a business perspective, it was very hard to sort of solve for that in just our P&L. So that got put on the shelf as a problem because I didn't end up solving that while I was running the business. But a couple of years later, as I was in grad school, started to pull that old problem off the shelf and say, maybe we should try and work on this again.
And that was at Greentown Labs.
Yeah. So I think what transpired there, I mean, very early days of the business, I was working out like a maybe 40 square foot, basically closet we turned into the office at home. And then I applied to a small accelerator there that was sponsored by Saint Gobain to help some small startups kind of get off the ground in the green building space. And so I ended up getting into that, and they gave me some desk space at Greentown. And for the folks who haven't been there, it's this wonderful 100,000 square foot facility in Somerville. Hundreds of companies work out of there. And many dozens of corporates have sponsored the space, and they have really become, in a lot of ways, the lightning rod for clean tech innovation in Somerville. And so just really vibrant community, awesome place to be for sure. And of course, it's right around all the universities that are also doing a lot of innovative things. So folks that come out of labs in those universities, a lot of them end up at Greentown. So it's just a really awesome, like, dense group of intellectuals trying to go make the world a better place.
And that's where you became a disruptor, in a very positive way of this of this sales cycle and the typical residential retrofit or even new build construction process. Talk about how did you focus right in on this model, and I want to talk about your model, the Zero Homes model.
Yeah, I mean, I think a few other components led up to this. I had the pain of being the person in the home, and also realized how expensive and how poor of a product experience it was for consumers. I had not yet connected the dots of why build software. How is that actually going to help us solve the climate challenge? What you might actually need to do to solve the climate challenge. But I spent some time when I was in grad school working in a couple of entrepreneurship classes, and then also participated in a couple of competitions that kind of rounded out this story to say, well, if you want to go solve the macroscopic problem, which today is about 60 million homes need to be electrified, there's probably about 5 projects that need to be done per home. So you're talking about 250 million projects roughly. I spent some time mapping out the number of hours spent by the homeowner, contractors, et cetera, across the ecosystem to actually deliver each of those projects. And then I looked at the workforce and I said, okay, well, there's a pretty big gap between how much time we're going to have to spend to get these done and the manpower we have to actually get it done. And in the timeline that it matters, right? So if you care about the climate crisis, we have a fixed amount of time to sort of solve this problem. What actually needs to be true in order to get us there? And I looked at that pretty directly to say, okay, well, the best place we can, or I think at least as an individual, can impact the amount of time that we need to spend there is in the sales cycle. And I said, I know a lot about that because I've done it quite a bit. I was actually pretty good at it. And we need to basically just delete it completely because we don't have the time to spend there. And also it's a bad customer experience. So can we build something that's actually going to solve that problem in a way that might actually improve adoption and lower the costs and lower the human time requirements, so that it's easier for folks to adopt these technologies? And I got a proof point in that. I did this little competition with another group in Massachusetts called the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. And they sent out an ask or a prize to design a net zero building out of an existing one. And this was kind of a nice opportunity for me to see how much time it actually takes if you want to be thoughtful around how to do that cost effectively. And the summation of that is it's kind of an intractable problem if you look at it from how expensive it is. So a little bit more about the competition. 13 architecture, engineering, and construction firms put in submissions. I, as a student, put in a submission, and I ended up winning a prize. And I think really the takeaway from that was I couldn't actually deliver a solution by just doing it by hand. I had to write a small program to actually figure out what the least cost way to achieve net zero was. And the other folks didn't do that, of course. Also, doesn't really make sense to to do that in the normal course of business. But what I found was that there's probably 100 ways to get that done. There's a few least cost ways to get that done, and the rest of them are dramatically more expensive. And so I sort of took a step back to say, well, if we want to help all these individuals, 60 million folks, figure out how to go electrify their homes, they broadly need to have a consistently low cost pathway to do that. And we're not going to be able to educate every contractor in how to deliver that, consistently and effectively. So we kind of need something that's going to stand in between homeowners and contractors to say, hey, here's kind of the right thing to do. Contractor, you don't have to figure that out, but you can still generate all the revenue by doing the work. And as a homeowner, we need to be able to deliver that advice to them for 5 cents, And that just sort of leads itself immediately to, well, if you can delete the requirements to go in the house, you might be able to also layer in some intelligence into that experience to educate the homeowner and then help the contractor, and then broadly help the whole ecosystem, get this solved.
It's great. And as I understand it, somebody comes to your website, you give them a tool. You basically said, you're going to do your own visual inspection of your house. You're going to photograph it with your phone, your iPhone. You're going to send it to us, and you're going to document all the appliances in your home and the square footage and all that good stuff. And I guess you get your utility bills together and other data points. And then you guys come up with a plan, and then you have an advisory service where you've got people that talk on the phone. Am I kind of getting it? And then once everybody's agreed on a plan, then you line them up with contractors that you've already vetted.
Yep. I mean, that's broad strokes exactly it.
Yep.
We do ask some homeowners to do a little bit of work for us,
Yep.
right? So we give them a tool in their house. They're going to spend probably 15 minutes taking photos of all sorts of things, and they're going to do a video walkthrough of their home. And functionally, what we're doing on our end is we actually create a 3D model of the building, and then all those photos, we layer all the metadata onto the house, so we understand what your wall types are and your window types and the electrical system in your home, and from that, then figure out what size heat pump you might need or what size water heater and the electrical requirements from that. And then we can price that. And so what we're able to turn around to a homeowner is not just, hey, here are all the opportunities that you have in front of you to make upgrades that may solve your problem or not. I mean, folks come to us for all sorts of different challenges, whether they have high utility bills or they're uncomfortable or something's broken or their friend said, hey, this might be a good idea, and they just want to learn more. We help give them advice there, but we're sort of collapsing what typically is an advisory service or an energy audit with what would be subsequently another dozen or more in-home sales calls with contractors.
And do you charge them? Do you charge them for that aspect of the work, that analysis part?
No, we don't. And remember the race to the bottom comment.
Yeah.
Folks have been pretty well trained to expect that they don't have to pay for that.
Sure.
That is what it is. I think from a business standpoint, it's certainly hard to not charge for that. But at the same time, you see the impact of doing a high quality job there and the conversion rates that we have from advisory calls into.
And then another costly, I mean, I would imagine a costly part of the business is the advisory service, the telephone consultation. And I saw on your website that it's 24/7. I mean, somebody can call you up in the middle of the night, and I don't think they get you, Grant, but they get somebody who's getting paid, right?
Appointments are not available 24/7 today, though that is our ambition. Absolutely. I mean, it's funny to laugh at, a lot of the purchasing experiences that we've so become accustomed to, and saying, I can go on Amazon anytime and buy basically anything I want.
Yeah.
Right. And yet you can only buy home improvement products, generally between 9 to 5 days a week. Sometimes you can get a consultation on a Saturday, maybe between like 8 and 12. But you have to go find this person. They got to travel to your house. Like, they might miss the time window they give you, or they might give you a 5-hour time window. And so anyways, it's just like, this is not a modern process, by any means. And our goal is to really upskill that dramatically to give folks a better experience. And frankly, just more consistently better advice.
And let me cover some of the technologies. Induction stoves, electric ovens, heat pumps for heating and cooling, space heating, space cooling, heat pump, water heaters, electric vehicle integration, electric panel upgrades, solar panels, battery storage systems, insulation. Am I getting kind of the universe of electrification technologies here or what am I missing, I guess is a better way of putting it?
Right. We don't do solar today. We're really not trying to compete with the solar folks. Our biggest value add is everything inside of the house. And, that can include electrical panels. It can include batteries. It can include EV chargers. But I think the most highly impactful products are typically heat pumps from a comfort and cost perspective. And then water heaters as well, especially from a cost perspective if you're on propane or something. And also from a climate standpoint, those are certainly some of the largest impactful items there. So about 50% of a home's carbon footprint comes from those two devices. Yeah. So we're really focused on making that easier. And the truth is also that heat pumps have a pretty gnarly design problem in them. Unlike furnaces, they're much more challenging to design and size correctly. And that is actually the biggest indicator of cost, as well as the design component of that. So if they're not so well designed, they will lead to either poor comfort outcomes, maybe even poor operational cost outcomes, or if they're oversized, they will be very, very expensive, which will turn folks off pretty quickly. So there's a sweet spot in there. And, we have built some software to do the engineering problem well so that we can deliver, high quality solutions for folks that are also cost effective.
Right. And then in terms of the business model, then you introduce your clients to contractors, and you have vetted contractors, and you must have an agreement with them that you get a certain percentage or you get a certain payment for bringing them this lead, bringing them this job, right? Is that the basic model?
Yeah, so we operate as the contractor. So fortunately, because I was a GC, it was pretty easy for me to get a GC license. And so what we turn into really is the external sales and design team for contractors. Folks will buy solutions from Zero Homes, and then we do find subcontractors and we vet them to go deliver that work. And we wrap them in some love by putting them in a process. They may not have great process internally. Yeah. We will put them through some QA work on every job to make sure that things are delivered correctly. And our customer promise is both that we're going to deliver things cost effectively, but folks are going to have good outcomes. And that tends to work quite well. Like, we have very happy customers after
Yeah.
after the end of our projects. But a really important thing here is that we're functionally trying to help contractors. I know how difficult it is to be a small contractor, right? And these are operationally complex businesses. In order to be a good contractor, you have to be good at marketing, good at sales and sales operations. You need to be good at logistics and bringing in equipment, make sure you have all the equipment. You need to be good at training your team, making sure they're out in the field, making sure you can process rebates and manage cash flow and right. And so when you're a 5-person or 10-person contracting team, and you jumped out of a previous contractor because you're like, well, I'm a really good tradesman and I think I can make more money being a small contractor, which is typically how a lot of businesses are started. How can you expect that they're actually going to be good at the other 10 things they need to deliver a high quality service?
Yeah.
No, right? And we shouldn't really expect that of them. So our goal in many ways is to cleave off some of those responsibilities and say, hey, here's what I want to help you do. I want to help you get in front of more customers and deliver high quality work every day, and let you focus on generating revenue and not having to go do sales and equipment purchasing and rebate processing and all those other things that are necessary components of your business, but are cost centers and distracting. And that's, in a lot of ways, my perspective on just having empathy for how hard those guys' lives are. Because I remember how hard
Yeah.
it was. I mean, I was at 4:30 every day, getting home at 9 p.m. and feeling like I'm drowning all the time, right? And they are as well. And so if we can make their lives a little easier and help them make some more money, that's a huge win for us.
It's a huge win for them, and what a terrific service you're providing for these homeowners. I can just tell you, I mean, I get asked all the time, do you know a good contractor? Do you know a good electrician? Do you know a good plumber? Do you know a good solar company, storage company, how do I get an EV charger installed? And so you've taken that away. You've vetted these contractors, which is I just think it's a tremendous benefit to the consumer.
Exactly. And painstakingly so. We spend a lot of time with those folks before we put them on.
I'm sure you do. Well, we've only got a few more minutes, but I wanted to hear, there must be some really gnarly case studies out that you've done, or just really, really challenging jobs when you think back about all the jobs that you've done. Are there a few that you can kind of highlight for us?
Sure. I also just want to make one more sort of comment around you just made around the homeowner. It is a wonderful service that we're providing to folks. It makes things a lot easier. It also remarkably is less expensive. This is not a cost plus service. And the reason that can happen is that we're actually just removing a lot of cost from the ecosystem. Sending a person to a house is expensive, and the homeowner has to bear that cost. Every time they have someone come over to the house, they're just racking up a $300, $500 bill on whatever system they end up buying.
Yep.
And
so be paid later. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And the ecosystem has to bear that cost somewhere, so the homeowner eventually has to pay it.
Yeah.
The point being that when folks purchase projects from us, it's typically 10% less expensive than like your average contractor.
That's
and in
awesome.
fact, we've had some of our subcontractors go out and bid the same job that they will actually end up delivering, and they're almost exclusively more expensive. And that's sort of a funny thing for us, but the reality is there's real economic value we're delivering to homeowners and making it easier at the same time.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, give me one a good example of a challenge you took on.
Well, I mean, we work in some of the harshest climates in the country. Heat pumps, they don't produce heat; they move heat. And when there's not a lot of heat to move, it becomes challenging to actually keep a house warm. So.
Yep.
We just did a job in Aspen as an example. That house, I think, is at 8,500 feet in elevation. So there's less heat in the air because there's actually just less dense air there. You have to derate heat pumps a couple % per 1,000 feet. So this heat pump, the homeowner had to buy, roughly 30% more heat pump than you would have to buy at sea level. But it also gets down to negative 20 degrees in Aspen, and so you're like, whoa, okay, you got a double whammy there. And of course, the home was quite large. And so, I think one of the most complicated designs we had to do is 2 outdoor units and 10 indoor units of those fan coils folks have seen on walls. to keep this house warm. And that subsequently turns into challenging electrical requirements because that much heat pump pulls a lot of power. And so there's a bit of a creative design that had to be put together to be able to make sure the house had enough electricity as well. And so in a lot of ways, we sort of take pride in doing the hard things first and saying, look, if we can design heat pumps in Aspen or heck, even in Gunnison, it gets down to -40 in the winter sometimes, then we can design them anywhere. And so in a lot of ways, we've sort of taken some pride in being able to get that done and really be able to demonstrate how valuable the platform is that we've built, and how applicable it is, in many ecosystems, geographies across the country.
Hey, Grant, thanks so much. Fascinating, great conversation, great business model. Love your energy. Love how you're creating win-win solutions here. I propose that we check back in a couple years and continue this conversation because I know you're going places with it. But thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Of course. Thanks, Ted. And yeah, happy to do it again whenever you're ready.
Great. That's it. Thanks for listening to Flanagan's EcoLogic. We'll see you next time.